A year ago, DC Comics began publishing Doomsday Clock, the long-awaited sequel to the most celebrated comic series of all time, Moore and Gibbons' Watchmen. Personally, I've been enjoying Doomsday Clock and have been waiting for the release of reasonably priced Watchmen figures for ages. The first set to come out features Dr. Manhattan and Ozymandias. Doomsday Clock finds utilitarian and master manipulator Ozymandias once again willing to go to extreme lengths to save humanity from itself. The first thing I noticed about this figure is that he isn't wearing a mask. The purple domino mask, which appeared only briefly in Watchmen, appears in shots of the Ozymandias action figure on Amazon, and until recently on DC Comics' own website, but not on the figure in front of me. This was a pleasant surprise, as I think we can all agree we mostly picture Adrian Veidt sans mask. The paintwork on Adrian's head is perfect. The sandy hair and the gold band encircling it never bleed into one another. His head and body are broader than I had expected, but after looking back through my comics, I now see Ozymandias is actually broader than I remembered him. Though I think he looks younger than he should, the figure's face is pretty fantastic. He stares intently, while simultaneously wearing a smug smile. The copyright information moulded onto the back of his thighs is mercifully hidden by his cape, though unfortunately nothing can hide the prominence of the screws in his elbows and knees. His tunic and cape are made of soft, bendy plastic, which you'll already be familiar with if you've bought figures from DC in recent years. I counted 20 points of articulation at 13 point sources on this figure. Though I think that Ozymandias can do any punching or kicking that you might wish him to do, he can't bend the way the Ozymandias doll Rorschach plays with in Chapter 1 of Watchmen does, and thanks to his tunic, he won't be raising his fists in triumph as he does in Chapter 12. The cuffs of his boots are weirdly connected to his shins, so they don't turn when his feet do. His torso is too heavy for his legs, so getting him to stand upright without support is almost impossible, as with many figures of this size. I tend to lose patience and balance him against a wall or shelf instead. His cape is short, so you can't rely on it to support him, as many Batman figures' capes can. There are no display stands, extra hands or heads included, and unfortunately no Bubastis cub either, which is odd given that Bubastis 2 is significant to the plot of Doomsday Clock. Now let's look at Dr. Manhattan. In Doomsday Clock, the scientist formerly known as John Osterman is the catalyst of the story, having left his own world to meddle in the fate of Earth-Zero. There are a couple of very tiny scratches and paintwork errors on this figure, but I'm pleased to report that the proportions are great. The face is 100% comic accurate, and the sculptor has paid a lot of attention to getting all of the muscles right. Unlike his comic counterpart, this Manhattan has no nipples, but he does have tiny little fingernails and toenails. As with Ozymandias, this figure has very prominent screws at the arms and leg joints. I think the main concern for many fans will be his inaccurate hue. In the comics, he's a celeste blue, while this figure is more of a teal. The darker colour does look pretty cool though. What bothers me most is his stooped posture, which I don't recall from any of the comics. Manhattan is a little more flexible than Ozymandias. I counted 22 points of articulation, only one of which was really stiff, at 15 point sources on him. Plus, he's not restricted by a tunic or cape. He can't sit cross-legged or bring his legs together as in the iconic shots of him floating in the air, but he can twist into almost any other position. His trunks are painted onto his legs, so it looks pretty weird when they're in any other position than standing straight. Because there's no extra handpieces included, he's perennially pointing with his left hand. This is great if you want to reenact his very first appearance working on supersymmetrical theory, or his looming presence in Vietnam, but otherwise it's very distracting. Then again, this is the Doomsday Clock iteration of Dr. Manhattan, who is a darker blue and has been pointing in the two issues he has appeared in so far, issue 2 and issue 7. Because he's not very heavy, this figure can easily stand unsupported. So, I can't relive every scene from Watchmen with these figures, but they look great anyway. They're both very pensive characters, so I think they shouldn't be moving too much. As mentioned, Veidt doesn't appear as advertised, and I'm hoping this will be true of later figures in the line, because the promo pics that show the comedian looking uncharacteristically debonair, and Rorschach's face looks ridiculous. Anyway, the first pack in the series is a flawed delight, and these 7-inch figures sit comfortably amid the new 52 DC figures, or the more recent DC Essentials figure line. They're not perfect, but they mostly look as the characters should, and they're pretty sturdy. At only $50 for the pair, I reckon they're good value for money.